The movie begins in the year 1480. In Romania, Prince Vlad is spending joyful moments with his beautiful wife Elizabetha. But this happiness was not destined to last long, as fate had something else in store for them. Suddenly, soldiers arrive at the palace and prepare to take the prince away because enemy troops have now encamped at the Romanian border, and a terrifying war has broken out. Vlad is forced to leave his beloved wife and head to the battlefield. Before departing, he gives strict orders to his soldiers: no matter what happens, ensure Elizabetha reaches the next fortress safely. Before going to war, Vlad visits the Pope and asks him to pray to God for the strength to fight and for his wife's protection. After this, the prince raises his sword and sets off toward the battlefield with his soldiers, where his destiny awaits him. Meanwhile, as the soldiers are escorting Elizabetha through the winding paths of the forest, a hidden enemy archer suddenly attacks them from the height of the trees. In an instant, 2 soldiers fall to the ground, their chests pierced by arrows. The remaining soldiers draw their swords and charge at the enemies. All around, there are only screams, the neighing of horses, and the clashing of swords echoing. In this chaos, Elizabetha spurs her horse at full speed and flees into the jungle. On the other side, in the battlefield, Vlad announces an attack on the enemies. His soldiers spread oil on the ground and set it ablaze, and in moments, a massive wall of fire rises, making the enemies tremble at the sight. Now, both armies clash. Vlad's sword slices through the air, felling the enemies' heads. A battle of blood and fire spreads across the entire field. But then, a wounded soldier staggers up to Vlad and says in a trembling voice, "My lord, an attack has been launched on Elizabetha." Hearing this, Vlad's face turns pale. Without wasting a moment, he mounts his horse and races toward the forest. Over there, Elizabetha has reached that terrifying jungle, where hundreds of traps lay buried under the snow-dangerous snares meant for catching bears. The enemy soldiers, pursuing her, arrive there too, and one by one, their horses' legs get caught in the traps. Amid a shower of arrows, the soldiers fall. But then, fate abandons Elizabetha as well. Her horse gets entangled in a trap and collapses to the ground. Now, the enemy soldiers raise their swords, carving a path through the snow, slowly advancing toward her. All around, there is cold wind and the stench of blood. Elizabetha, terrified, steps back, but as she takes one step, her foot gets caught in a bear trap. With the sound of metal, the trap clamps onto her leg, and her scream echoes through the entire jungle. At that very moment, Vlad arrives, fire in his eyes, anger on his face, and fear in his heart. But fate seems to be toying with him. His horse too gets caught in a hidden trap under the snow and falls. Now Vlad draws his sword and charges at the enemies on foot. With every strike, blood splatters onto the snow. One by one, the soldiers fall under his sword. The last soldier remains. Vlad hurls his sword with full force. It slices through the air and passes right through the enemy. But in the next instant, that sword strikes Elizabetha. Time seems to freeze. The valor on Vlad's face shatters in an instant. He rushes to his wife and takes her in his arms. But now it was too late. Elizabetha's eyes were closed forever. Vlad's screams could melt the jungle's snow. Trembling with rage, he goes straight to the Pope. He shouts, "I have shed the blood of thousands in the name of your God. I have fought every battle for him. I have made every prayer to him. Then why didn't he save my wife? Your voice was trembling. You said she would be safe, but she died. Now I want my wife back, even if the price is my soul." In fact, Maria was a beautiful girl living in Italy, whose engagement was to the nephew of the Queen of England. But on the wedding day, something happened that shocked everyone. From the beginning, Maria did not want to get married in a church, so her family arranged the wedding in their own mansion. Everything was going normally, the mansion adorned with flowers, a crowd of guests, and an atmosphere of joy. But then, the prince secretly calls a bishop without telling anyone, so that the marriage could receive God's blessings. As soon as the bishop enters and looks toward Maria, suddenly Maria's eyes turn red. Her body begins to tremble, and she starts muttering something in strange voices. Everyone steps back in fear. The bishop, panicking, tries to approach her. But then, a terrifying growl emerges from within Maria, and she lunges at the bishop. She becomes so powerful that 4 men together cannot hold her back. The bishop falls to the ground, and deep marks appear on his neck. During this, all the candles in the room extinguish on their own, and a cold wind spreads through the atmosphere. It felt as if some dark shadow had taken the mansion in its grip. Now, the doctor tells the priest that since that day, Maria has started saying strange things. Sometimes, she speaks in someone else's voice, sometimes starts writing on the walls, and whenever anyone prays, she begins to scream. Forced by this, she was imprisoned in this basement because she was no longer human. After this, the doctor tells the priest that Maria was born in the year 1739. That means she is over 130 years old. Hearing this, everyone's faces turn pale. Now suspicion has turned into certainty. Is Maria not human, but the devil himself? At that moment, Maria's eyes suddenly open. A silence falls over the room, and the priest slowly approaches her. He sees that Maria's teeth are sharp, just like an animal's. Seeing this, the priest says in terror, "This is a vampire." The priest knew that vampires cannot tolerate sunlight. He immediately opens the window. As soon as the first ray of sunlight falls on Maria's body, her skin begins to burn, and smoke rises. Now the priest places a cross in front of her, and as soon as she touches it, the cross catches fire on its own. Seeing this sight, everyone's hair stands on end. Then the priest makes a small cut on Junior Dr. Simon's finger and drips a few drops of his blood into Maria's mouth. Suddenly, Maria's body stirs, and she starts muttering in a low voice. The priest notices a deep mark on her neck, which clearly indicates that she was bitten by a vampire. The priest says, 400 years have passed, but no one has ever discovered who the first vampire was. At that moment, Maria's voice echoes, "The first vampire is my master, a prince. He will soon come to take his princess." Hearing this, the ground slips from under everyone's feet. On the other side, we see the darkness of night, a dense forest, and in the midst of it, a horse-drawn carriage slowly moving forward. Sitting inside the carriage is Jonathan, a young lawyer heading toward a mysterious place. Suddenly, the coachman stops the carriage in panic and says, "Forgive me, sir. I cannot go any further because now the wolves come out for their prey." Saying this, he hands Jonathan his luggage, turns around, and disappears. Now, all around is silence and the whistling sound of the wind. Forced, Jonathan proceeds on foot. After walking for hours, he finally reaches his destination, a massive, dark, and terrifying castle that would make anyone's soul shiver. As soon as he steps inside, the door behind him closes on its own. Then the front door opens by itself and slams shut with force. Jonathan's breaths quicken. As he looks around, suddenly a shadow of a figure appears on the balcony. Lightning flashes, and the shadow vanishes. As Jonathan turns, an old man stands behind him. White hair, red eyes, and a completely expressionless face. He gently extinguishes the torch, and at that moment, all the lights in the palace ignite on their own. Now, smiling, he says, "I am Prince Vlad, whom some people also know as Dracula." After this, both sit at the dining table. Jonathan, famished, starts eating, but Dracula doesn't touch a morsel. He just stares at Jonathan with his cold eyes, and as he waves his hand, the plate in front of him slides toward Jonathan on its own. Jonathan is startled but thinks it must be some trick. He doesn't know that this is no magic, but the beginning of the most terrifying moment of his life. As Jonathan is taking out papers from his bag, Dracula's gaze falls on a small rat scurrying in the corner of the room. He smiles faintly and, in an instant, picks up a fork and impales it against the wall. Then he squeezes the rat like a lemon, and its blood drips into a goblet. He licks the blood, as if it were poison for others, but nectar for him. Jonathan is stunned seeing all this, but hiding his fear, he extends the papers and says, "The government wants to buy this old mansion of yours and convert it into a hospital." At that moment, his bag falls to the ground, and a cross inside rolls out. Dracula's eyes fix on the cross. His eyes turn red. In a low but heavy voice, he asks, "Do you believe in God?" Jonathan stammers a bit and says, No, this was just given to me by the coachman." Dracula chuckles lightly and raises his sharp fingers, gesturing in the air. Instantly, the cross lifts into the air and falls into the fire, burning up. Then he approaches Jonathan and says in a cold voice, "Now the night is quite late. It's time to sleep." He escorts him to his room and says, "Remember, do not leave this room after darkness falls." As Dracula turns, his shadow on the wall stretches longer, as if taking on a demonic form separate from the wall. Then he returns to the hall, stops in front of a dark statue, and softly says, "Keep an eye on this human." On the other side, Jonathan sits in his room reading a book. The book contains the history of that very castle. Suddenly, his eyes fall on an old page with a picture of young Vlad, but the next page is torn. As he tries to turn it, he hears the sound of someone breathing outside the window. The atmosphere there is extremely eerie. Spider webs everywhere, old coffins, and dust accumulated on the walls. Jonathan's breaths quicken, but curiosity forces him onward. Slowly, he approaches a coffin and lifts its lid with trembling hands. At that moment, his eyes widen in shock. Inside the coffin lies Dracula, eyes closed, with a strange smile frozen on his lips, as if in deep sleep or waiting for prey. Jonathan steps back in fear, but then Dracula's eyes open, and his cold voice echoes, "You shouldn't have come here." Suddenly, Several gargoyles emerge from the darkness and pounce on Jonathan. He tries to scream, but before he can, he is knocked unconscious. Dracula begins to speak in a slow, heavy voice. Centuries ago, when I was human, my name was Vlad. I was a brave warrior of Transylvania, and in my life, there was only one love, Elizabetha. He goes on to tell how enemies attacked his kingdom, forcing Vlad to go to war. Before leaving, Elizabetha had said, "If you don't return, I won't live either." Moisture glimmers in Dracula's eyes. He says, "I won the war, but someone delivered the news of my victory wrongly. People in the palace spread the rumor that I had died, and hearing this, my Elizabetha threw herself from the height of the palace." Jonathan's eyes widen in astonishment. Dracula continues, "When I returned, she lay before me drenched in blood. The church said that a soul that takes its own life cannot find peace, but I couldn't accept that rule of God. I rebelled against my own God, and in that moment, I lost my humanity." Dracula clenches his fist in anger and says, "I swore that until I get my Elizabetha back, not even death can harm me." Jonathan trembles hearing his words because now he understands that Dracula is no ordinary monster, but the vengeful face of a broken love. Dracula tells Jonathan that for centuries, he waited only for Elizabetha's return because he believed pure souls are reborn. He searched everywhere, but finding her was impossible. The Black Plague had swallowed half the women, and those who survived had gone to holy places like churches, where he was forbidden to step. He became lonely, so mad in love with Elizabetha that in desperation, he tried to end his life by jumping from the palace window. But death rejected him every time. Then he resolved that if he couldn't find her, Elizabetha would come to him herself. For 100 years, he prepared a perfume from magical flowers whose scent could mesmerize anyone. He went to Italy to test it, and the women there went mad with its fragrance, chasing after him. Now he could make anyone dance to his tune with that scent. But one day, he felt he had finally found Elizabetha. Approaching, he saw it was someone else. That night, everyone mocked his laughter, and in that moment, he realized that gatherings only yield beautiful women, not Elizabetha. Dracula says that when he realized true love was only in Elizabetha, he decided he wouldn't search alone anymore. Instead, he would turn all the women of the world into vampires so they could search for Elizabetha together. That very night, he bit all the women in the gathering, including Maria. After that, he went to Elizabetha's grave and broke open her coffin, but inside, only ashes remained. Seeing this, Dracula broke down and swore he would never leave this palace again. Then he turned his servants into gargoyles, who brought treasures from around the world for him, and those vampire women set out to find Elizabetha. Hearing all this, Jonathan becomes emotional and tells Dracula that he can understand his plight because he too loves a girl, truly Mina. When Dracula sees Mina's picture, he is stunned because she looks exactly like Elizabetha. After this, Dracula lets Jonathan go without killing him and orders the gargoyles, "Go, bring me lots of blood, so that when I meet Mina, I can look young and handsome." On the other side, in Paris, Priest Dumont shows a picture to the priest and says, "We must find this woman because she is the key to reaching Dracula." Then the priest opens a book and explains that if someone insults God, God doesn't give them death, but a life worse than death. But if repentance comes from the heart, the same God can forgive. That is, if Dracula is killed, all vampires will turn back into humans. At that moment, Simon arrives and, seeing the picture in the doctor's hand, says, "This is the same girl who was sitting in the visitor's room just now." Hearing this, Dumont and the priest rush to that room and meet Mina. Mina tells them that she is Maria's best friend. They met at a party, and since then, Mina and Maria have always been together. But on the wedding day, when Maria saw the bishop, she suddenly went mad in a strange way. Mina says that many times she felt as if Maria didn't belong to this century. There was something mysterious and supernatural inside her. Meanwhile, Dracula arrives at the monastery disguised as a beggar. A nun doesn't recognize him and, out of kindness, brings him inside. But as soon as Dracula steps in, he sheds his disguise. The old terrifying royal gleam returns to his face. He takes out the magical perfume from his pocket, which he prepared centuries ago, and sprays it on the statue of Jesus. In moments, the fragrance spreads throughout the monastery. There was some magic in that scent that made all the nuns, one by one, mesmerized and drawn toward Dracula, as if an invisible force was calling them. Their eyes were intoxicated, and they began falling at Dracula's feet one by one. Meanwhile, Dracula gazes at them with a terrifying smile. The nuns writhe madly to get closer to him. As they gather around him, he pounces on them with a devilish smile. His eyes burn like red embers, and in the next moment, he sinks his sharp teeth into their necks. The monastery echoes with screams, but no one can stop him. In moments, the entire monastery turns into a silent pool of blood. Meanwhile, in the castle, Jonathan lay alone. Seizing the opportunity, he breaks his chains with all his strength. As the chains snap, he carefully plants his feet on the ground and quietly heads toward the basement to escape the palace. But then, a gargoyle spots him from an upper window. It roars loudly and calls its companions. As Jonathan moves toward the window, the gargoyle cuts the cloth with an axe, leaving Jonathan hanging from the wall. Now, swinging from the wall, Jonathan falls down and tumbles onto the frozen lake. The gargoyles jump down from above and advance toward him. Their claws scrape against the ice, but suddenly, one gargoyle falls through the breaking ice into the lake. Seeing this, the others retreat. Jonathan crawls slowly across the lake's surface amid cold breaths. The cold seeps into his bones, but courage still remains in his steps. After this, we see Dracula, who now looks much younger and stronger than before. His face glows as if centuries of fatigue have suddenly vanished. Now he arrives at Simon's clinic, and upon entering, he changes the entire atmosphere of the room with the fragrance of his magical perfume. In moments, Simon's eyes glaze over, and he falls under Dracula's control. Dracula says calmly, "Take me to her." Without thinking, Simon leads him to Maria's room. As soon as Maria sees Dracula, a mad joy spreads across her face. In a husky voice, she says, I have found Elizabetha." Hearing this, a dangerous smile forms on Dracula's lips. As a reward, he places Simon before her and says, "This is your reward. Drink his blood." Maria lunges and sinks her teeth into Simon's neck. Silence falls over the room. Meanwhile, the priest is researching in his old books. Suddenly, he finds a centuries-old picture, and seeing it, his face turns pale. At that moment, a man enters and says, "The doctor has called you." Now the priest reaches Dumo. Dumo, in a panicked voice, says that Maria is missing and Simon is no longer human. The priest sees the bite marks on his neck and senses the same perfume fragrance on his skin that he had read about in connection with Dracula. As soon as Dumo describes the mysterious man's appearance, the priest's eyes widen. In a trembling voice, he says, "Oh God, he is here, and now Mina is in danger." After this, we see Mina, who appears very restless and confused. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. Mina opens the door to find Maria standing there completely healthy, young, and as beautiful as before. Mina asks in astonishment, "Weren't you sick?" Maria smiles and replies that Dr. Dumont has now allowed her to go home. Then she tells Mina that she has a very special friend who is eagerly waiting to meet her. Maria tells Mina to dress nicely because they are both going out. A little later, both arrive at a grand hotel where Dracula is already waiting for them. As soon as Dracula's eyes fall on Mina, they freeze. It feels as if he has found his lost love, Elizabetha, again. Maria smiles and introduces Mina to Dracula. Dracula drowns in her praises. "Your eyes are like a mirror to memories from centuries ago." He takes her hand and kisses it. Suddenly, strange visions flood Mina's mind, as if she has seen Dracula somewhere before, long ago. She panics and makes an excuse to leave immediately, but Dracula follows her to the fair. There, Mina enters a haunted house and gets scared when a fake skeleton falls. Dracula quickly pulls her out. Outside, Mina starts playing a shooting game. Dracula approaches from behind, holds her hands, and teaches her to aim. In that moment, those old visions appear to Mina again, like memories from another life. A little later, they return to the hotel. There, Dracula shows Mina a small music box, the very one he gave his wife Elizabetha centuries ago. The unfinished love still glimmers in his eyes. An old, mysterious tune plays from the music box. Mina listens carefully, and suddenly her face changes. The tune feels strangely familiar, as if she has heard it before, perhaps in another life. Slowly, hazy images emerge in her mind. A woman standing by a palace window, and a man who looks just like Dracula. Mina panics and yells at Dracula in anger, "You're casting some spell on me," playing with my mind. Looking into her eyes, Dracula softly says, "No, Mina. I am only telling you the truth that you yourself have forgotten. Elizabetha was my wife, and I am certain you are her, your second birth." Mina, stunned and angry, replies, "I am Mina, not Elizabetha." Dracula just smiles faintly, as if he knows the truth. Then he hands her the music box and says, "Keep this with you. Perhaps one day it will remind you of everything." After this, he escorts her home. The night was cold, but a strange restlessness filled Mina's heart. As soon as she enters the house, the priest and Dr. Dumont are there, treating the injured Jonathan. Mina can't comprehend what is happening. Then the priest looks at her and says, "Mina, you must stay away from that man. He is not human. He is a vampire. He drinks people's blood and uses that mysterious perfumed scent to control them." Mina's breath stops. One question swirls in her mind. Is Dracula really what everyone says? Or is he truly the one she loved centuries ago? The priest examines Mina's neck closely, suspecting Dracula might have left bite marks, but there are none. This confuses him even more. Mina doesn't want to hear anything else. Fear and confusion are evident in her eyes. She runs away from there and locks herself in her room. Now she bursts into tears. She can't understand what is happening to her. Her heart pulls her toward Dracula, but her mind repeatedly tells her to stay away. While crying, her eyes fall on the small music box Dracula gave her. She slowly opens it. As soon as it opens, the same old tune plays, the one she heard before. Mina's eyes flutter, and suddenly scenes from the past emerge before her. She stands in a palace, wearing a white gown, and Dracula kneels before her, kissing her hand. The warmth of that moment, that feeling, it all feels real to her. Slowly, she becomes completely lost in these visions. But as her eyes open, she recoils in fear, because Dracula stands right in front of her. Mina's breaths quicken. In a trembling voice, she says, You, what are you doing here? Leave, please leave. Dracula looks at her with calm eyes and says, If I leave, will your heart forget me too, Mina? Mina can't say anything, but fear and love both shine in her eyes. Pain and truth gleam in Dracula's eyes. He steps closer and softly says, Mina, you don't know how many centuries I have waited for you. But Mina screams and steps back. Just don't say anything more. She is trembling, filled with fear and confusion. Dracula takes a deep breath and moves toward the window. He looks out at the cold air. Then he says, If you don't want to hear my truth, perhaps there is no point in my existence. He is about to jump from the window when Mina panics and shouts, Wait, are you going to commit suicide? Dracula turns to her and says, I passed death long ago. Mina, now living without you is impossible for me. He steps forward and shows the perfume vial in his hand. You think I controlled you? I never used this perfume on you. Saying this, he throws the vial into the fire. Tears stream from Mina's eyes. In a trembling voice, she says, But you drink human blood. Dracula bows his head slightly. Yes, Mina, I drink blood because I am no longer human. I am a cursed soul, a vampire. But I will never drink your blood. I swear. At that moment, a little blood drips from Mina's nose. Unknowingly, Dracula wipes it with his finger, and as soon as the blood touches his tongue, he pauses for a moment. An old pain flashes in his eyes. Now he holds Mina's hand and softly says, Your blood, your scent, everything is just as it was centuries ago. You are my Elizabeth. Mina's breaths almost stop. Those old moments appear again. The palace, the gown, Dracula looking at her with loving eyes, and then she remembers everything. Tears pour from her eyes. In a trembling voice, she says, Yes, now I remember everything. I am Elizabeth, and you are my Vlad. A sparkle returns to Dracula's eyes. Both draw close to each other, and their love, incomplete for centuries, finally completes. They lose themselves in each other's embrace, where time, death, and curse all seem to stand still. The priest raises his rifle and steps back, but Maria has now fully become a vampire. Her eyes glow red, and her teeth protrude. She grabs the priest's neck and slams him against the wall. Then Jonathan swings an iron rod from behind, striking her. The rod pierces through her back, but she doesn't stop. She screams loudly, You all are humans, but you will never understand the true meaning of love. Now she turns toward Henry, who is groaning on the ground. The priest quickly raises a cross and waves it in front of her. As the cross's light falls on her, Maria screams in pain. Her skin burns, and she steps back. Seizing the moment, the priest pulls a vial of holy water from his jacket and throws it on her. As the water hits, smoke rises from her face. She writhes and screams, Dracula, save me! But no response comes. Slowly, her body turns to ash and scatters in the wind. Everyone falls silent for a moment. Henry lies groaning on the ground. The priest bends to help him. Then Jonathan says, We can't delay anymore. Mina is in danger, and she may no longer be human. The priest nods. Yes, now we must go to Dracula's castle. That's where it all ends. Either Dracula dies, or we do. After this, the three set out into the night with weapons, heading straight for the castle where centuries-old evil awaits them. Ted, shells collide with the castle walls and explode, scattering everywhere. But Dracula and Mina remain safe inside the castle. Dracula orders his pet gargoyles to stop any humans approaching from outside. Now the priest and his team try to enter the castle slowly. They see the castle doors closing on their own and bloodstains glowing on the walls. Dracula, sitting beside Mina, says, Now you are entitled to my world. You have no reason to fear. Mina slowly holds his hand and says, "Now I want to be with you forever, no matter what." Meanwhile, the priest enters the main hall of the castle with his team. He sees Dracula and Mina safe, but strange shadows moving on the surrounding walls and floor. Through his gargoyles, Dracula challenges the priest. "If you try to touch me or Mina, your fate will be the same as Maria's, right before your eyes." The priest fears a little, but still advances. Dracula and the gargoyles stand ready for the confrontation. The silence inside the castle is now the beginning of a great storm, where the final clash between human and vampire is about to happen. The castle's roof begins to collapse. Then Dracula tells Mina that he must go out and face them, and she should stay in the room. Saying this, Dracula leaves the room. Meanwhile, the gargoyles pounce on the soldiers, killing many. But the soldiers' numbers are overwhelming, and slowly they spread throughout the castle. Jonathan leads his team to the basement. As Mina sees the soldiers approaching her room, she closes the door. Jonathan shows the soldiers the coffin and says Dracula might be hiding in it. The soldiers fire at the coffin, but suddenly, Dracula appears from behind Jonathan and knocks him unconscious. Then, joining with the gargoyles, he attacks the soldiers and slays many in a short time. As soon as the soldiers enter the castle, they fall one by one before Dracula's power. Then Henry seizes the moment and fires at Dracula, but it has no effect on him. Now Dracula slits Henry's throat and seals the door so no soldier can enter. After this, he places his sword at the priest's throat. The priest stands frozen in fear and whispers, What will you do?"